Yes, we're going to have Alex.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. Sorry for the background noise. I was just on the road while joining the call, but I hope I'll be clear. All right, so my name is Alex Obula. As I had mentioned, I'm the lead developer at ILoveBlackPeople. And some exciting news this week, we were able to launch the ILoveBlackPeople Safe Places app on the Google Play Store. I think our audience should have the link to the app. You can share it on the chat section.
All right.
So
Let me share it just now.
All right, so I'm going to take the next couple of minutes to just demo it so you can have an overview of how the app works. And maybe I'll also go through some of the feedback and help we might need from you in terms of support to help us improve the application. All right, so this is the logo we have for the app. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right, this is the logo we have for the app. Yeah, so when you get in, you have an option to log in and sign up. So if it's your first time accessing the app, you'll need to sign up for the service. So you can go ahead and click on sign up. For the sign up process, you just need to provide your name, email address. So I'll just use a company email. Then you do need to provide your phone number. In my case, I'm currently in Kenya, so I'm just going to go ahead and search for that. You have Kenya here, and put in a fake number. Then put in a password and confirm it. Please enter only number. Oh, sorry, that's the phone number. All right, so that's all you need to sign up. So I've basically provided my email address and password. So for me, I can go ahead and sign in. So again, using the same email I just used to sign up. And the same password. All right, and so I'm signed in. So what basically happens is the very first time the app loads up, you're going to see the current location that you're in. And if you do click these categories at the top, so these are different types of businesses. You have like accommodation, beauty, education and childcare, finance, food, health, legal and transportation. So those are the 8 key categories that we feel are basic to every human being. Like whether you're at home or traveling, these are the 8 basic things you'll need basically to survive. So like as you can see in my place, I'm at a very remote location right now, so not a lot of businesses here, but I did see something around education, right? So you can see there's a primary school close to me called Lugusi Primary. And the whole purpose for this application is for our members, that's you guys, to help us protect Black people by identifying places that are safe for them. So for example, like if this is my home region and I know this place, so maybe I've been, or even maybe I might be traveling and I've been to this place, Lugusi Primary, and as a Black person, they treated me well and they can vouch for it as a place that's Black friendly. I can go ahead and just say like, once I do that, this business is recommended. You can see it says business has recommended successfully. So that business is recommended as a Black friendly business. And we basically are using you as our community to crowdsource Black friendly businesses across the globe to make sure we can actually present this to Black people all over to ensure that they are safe while traveling. And something that you'll notice, let me see if I can get businesses in other categories. Okay, like I mentioned, I'm in a remote location. So let me, I think this is a great segue to show you the other functionality of the app. So as you can see, I'm on the home section, but I can go ahead and switch to the close by section. So what this close by allows you to do is search for businesses in other locations. So let's say, for example, I had traveled in the past, maybe before I accessed the app, and I remember that place, say in Mombasa. Mombasa is a coastal city in Kenya. I remember that place in Mombasa that was Black friendly, and I want to recommend it. So I'm not there right now, but I can go ahead and search for that place. So I can say accommodation. So Mombasa being a coastal city, it's popular with tourists. So there are a lot of hotels and restaurants there. So you can go ahead and search for Mombasa. It's Mombasa, Kenya. And immediately I search, I can see a list of accommodations. And something that's interesting here is, so for example, you see this place, City Blue Creek Hotel. Maybe you've never been there, so you don't know whether it's Black friendly or not, or you've actually been there and you're not treated well. So you do consider it not Black friendly. For us, we are only interested in collecting information about Black friendly places. If a place is not Black friendly, we simply don't interact with that place. So that's why we have this skip button here. So like when you press skip, this section is just removed. So like for anything that you press skip on, it's just removed. But then again, if you get to like a business that you've been to, you love the way they treated you in that business as a Black person, you can again go ahead and hit like to recommend that place, right? Yeah, so in a nutshell, I think those are the highlights of the app. The other highlight really I'd say is this invite section. You can go ahead and hit invite, and we encourage you to do this, to kind of share this with your friends and family. So for example, I'll share this with an I Love Black People contact, and you can see basically once I hit send, it sends them a message with the link that they can use to actually download the app, right? So you can send this basically to any of your contacts, whether they're on WhatsApp or through text messages. So like the two huge things we're really asking you to do with this app is to actually recommend places that you consider Black friendly because you've been there before and you are treated well as a Black person. And two, invite as many people as possible to download the app and join the community. By using the invite button, folks will be able to download the app and join our community. So those are the really two big asks we are requesting support with, because we do not have enough businesses yet. So we're really looking up to you, the community, to help us build this platform. Then also do give us feedback if you've seen things that could be improved, that maybe, for example, one thing that I see right now is I did recommend a business here. So like maybe somebody earlier on asked me, so how can I check to see businesses that I've recommended? So that was their suggestion of how we can improve this app. So like they'll actually like to see a list of businesses they personally recommended. So if you have really other suggestions that we can use to improve the applications, we'll really love to see that. You can reach out directly to myself, Awad, or Yvonne, or respond on our WhatsApp groups. Yeah, and if you come across any bugs, any issues, maybe if the application is not working as it's supposed to be, we'll again love to hear your feedback on that. As I mentioned, this is the first time we're releasing this application, so we are expecting it to have maybe bugs, maybe things that are not working as they're supposed to be. Yeah, we really love the support as a community in terms of identifying those issues so we can get our development team working on that. Other than that, I think that's all I have to talk about with regards to the app. I hope you've been able to share the link to download the app from the Play Store on the chat section.
Yes, I did share it in the chat section, and
all right.
yes,
So like
was the question, Alex, is the app available to iPhone users, or when is it going to be available for iPhone users, iOS?
Okay. So we are actually currently still testing on iPhone, and we're about to launch the app for anyone who's interested to join our test group, you can send me your email, like maybe share it directly with Awad. You can inbox Awad and he'll give that to me, and I'll be able to include you in our closed test group. So right now we are still testing the iOS app. We'll be launching it soon. But if you want to be part of the group that's testing the app, this is a closed group, like I mentioned. Please do send your email to Awad, and I'll follow up directly with you to onboard you as part of our test team.
Yes, so Christine Bailey, you can share your email address so that you can join the testing group if you are interested.
All right, any other questions, Awad?
Yes, Christine said, I'm a travel business owner. Can I register as a business in the app?
So Christine, what you could do is you could recommend your business as a Black-friendly place. So you will be recommending this business, not really as the owner, but like as a community member who can vouch for this business being a Black-friendly place. It's your own business, so that's still okay. But if you do want to have your business registered with us as a Black-friendly place, you can go ahead and recommend it directly. And Awad, maybe what you can do, like Christine, if you download the app, then you go to the close by section. Maybe let me just share my screen again. Sorry, not camera. Share my screen again. Yeah, so Christine, if you download the app and go to the close by section, you can just go ahead and search. So maybe I'm not sure what type of business you have. So maybe assuming it's a restaurant, you can search for food. Then just type the location where you're currently located in. So maybe say it's I don't know, let's say like New York, right? And there's a high chance your business may appear here, and you can actually just go ahead and click like. But in case it doesn't appear here, something else you can do is go directly to our website, ILoveBlackPeople.com, and click the recommend button on the top right corner to recommend that business through our website. Then maybe Awad, you can also share the recommendation link for our website. Yeah, but it would be great if you can actually do it through the app. If you just search for your current location, most likely your business will be listed here as a business in that area. So you can then recommend it as a Black-friendly business here by clicking the like button.
All right, so Christine did share your email address. I'll go forward and share it to you. And also we have another last question. It says, if you recommend a business and later realize that it's not Black friendly or Black owned, can it be removed?
In that case, you can just shoot us an email, info@iloveblackpeople.com with your email address. So that's the email address you registered with while recommending the business and the name of the business. Then we will follow up in taking a look at the business and reviewing it for potential removal from our lists. So we just need to attain the person who recommended it. Then we are going to look into maybe possibly reversing your recommendation. So just send us an email to info@iloveblackpeople.com with the email address you used to register while recommending.
And then Alfred from Ghana saying, how do you authenticate the recommended business if indeed it's Black friendly?
So like Alfred, this is pretty much your experience with regards to that place. It makes sense if the business you're recommending is something you've personally experienced. So for example, you've traveled to a new town, you're new there, you've just gone to a restaurant, you had food there, they treated you well, there was no discrimination. And you see, now that's a very personal experience, and you can actually vouch for that place based on how those people treated you there and then, right? But and you can use that personal experience as a recommendation. Just the same way with other things, if I come and ask you like, hey, Alfred, where can I get nice shoes? You're going to give me your personal experience. Like, I went to this shop, I bought these shoes. I've had them for 3 years, they're still good. So like, you know, it's your personal experience of that place. Then for some areas you can go and like you really like they really don't treat you that well. So for like places like those, you will not recommend somebody to even go to that place. So for ways to authenticate a business, we're really looking for your own personal experience about those businesses. And I think with time, as we grow, we'll find like good places are often recommended by many people. So I think with time, we'll start seeing like specific places having a high number of recommendations. So like the fact that we just have a lot of people recommending this place kind of gives it more validation. So like that's kind of what we're using as of now.
All right, thank you. So there are no more questions. If you do have a question, kindly write in the chat section, then we will respond you to our WhatsApp groups. And I'm also going to share the link to our WhatsApp group, the current WhatsApp group, which we are sharing with everyone. Thank you, Alex.
All right, thanks so much, Rod.
All right, thank you, Chess. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. So moving on next, we're going to have our country reports from different countries. To those who missed the link, I'm going to reshare it in the group just now to download the application for Android users. For the iOS, it's going to be launched soon, and it will it's going to be communicated to everyone through emails and WhatsApp. So stay alert. So to moving forward, we are going to have country reports. We are going to start with Zoho from Ghana. Yes, Zoho, can you hear me?
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. I hope I'm loud and clear.
Yes, you are loud and clear. So you do have a minute to present your.
All right, good afternoon, my Black brothers and sisters of Africa. I Love Black People Ghana chapter weekly reports dated 18th March 2022. Week under review, second quarter of March, that's 12th March to 18th March. Summary of activities. We started our Saturday conference meeting by enjoying our usual spokesperson report on the weekly activities in our respective countries, regions, and ambassador groups. Our most edutainment class and healthcare class session was delivered by Professor Dr. Terry Wright, our Pan-African class lecturer, and Queen Mother Nana Ikuya Nzinzili, a traditional healer and founder of the Natural Path Holistic Wellness Center, LLC. We were glad to continue with the marathon of seasoned health lessons and Pan-African education. Our regular Tuesday newsletters, which highlights on education, health, legal, finance, transportation, beauty, food, and accommodation, and other Black-owned and Black-friendly content was enjoyed. Members were encouraged to submit their contributions on Thursdays for review and publishing in the newsletter. I Love Black People. Members were encouraged to follow, like, retweet, and comment on the various social media platforms of the group. Our honorable ambassadors and members were encouraged to embark on our group activities to help affect the mission and vision of the I Love Black People activities in protecting against racism and xenophobia. Members and ambassadors are reminded to submit Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to the group's website with format provided in various groups. We join hands with our brothers and sisters all over the world facing any form of distress, xenophobic attacks, and racism with encouragement, relief, hope, and love messages. I Love Black People members, family, and friends. Use our emergency button located on the ILoveBlackPeople.com website in the heat, fight, or protection against racism and xenophobic attacks wherever you may find yourself. We join family and friends in Russia-Ukraine conflict in spirit and in truth with supplications and best wishes. We say to the numerous life lost, we say no to war. Let's spread love. I love Black people. Members who went against the group mission, objectives, and goals were penalized and informed to stick to the group's mission, objectives, and goals only if they want to enjoy the membership. Ambassadors and members in our country group made time to help all new members with their challenges with the weekly tasks, and we encourage everyone in the group to seek for clarification and assistance when needful. I Love Black People members, that's old and new, were once again encouraged to stick to the I Love Black People mission and contribute only to the fight against racism and xenophobic attacks. In our country group, members who weren't able to attend the Zoom conference call session on last week Saturday were encouraged to do so this time and further recommend others by sharing the link to this Saturday's meeting. Quote of the week: in recognizing the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest attributes. Thurgood Marshall, an American lawyer and activist, that's the first African American justice. Ghana Weekly COVID-19 update is made available by the link provided below. Live it, love it. You are Black, we are Black. I love Black people. I am because we are. Reporting Zoe Owusu Agbe, Patrice Lumumba, I love Black people. I am because we are. Thank you.
I am because you are. Thank you so much, Brother Zoho Agbe, for presenting a report on behalf of Ghana. On next, we're going to have our brother Elijah Nyabuti to present on a report on behalf of our sister Anna Karina of Mozambique. Yes, Brother Elijah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can I hear you?
Go ahead and present the report from Anna Karina and for Derek Musonda for Zambia, respectively.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, members and ambassadors. On behalf of Anna Karina, this is the Mozambique report, which is dated 14th March 2022 to 19th March 2022. The country weekly activities to protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. Mozambique is a state of alert against xenophobic attacks against Mozambican immigrants, despite of the fact we didn't hear any rumors of information related to the issue. The country is on the middle rainy season and it has been severely affected by cyclones Ana and Kabasira and now Gombe in the north. Because of that, it was declared a state of emergency in the country. War crisis in Ukraine, we obtained registration of 15 Mozambican, most of them students who fled from Ukraine. 4 are already in Mozambique and the rest distributed between Poland and Finland. So in the group, the weekly task was shared. ILoveBlackPeople App was shared and members were encouraged to download it. The Pan-African Historical members were encouraged to attend the Pan-African Historical on Saturday. I Love Black People radio show announcement with the people, with the guest Alex Abagube and Alex, aka Alex Connect, was shared. An announcement was made to call members to volunteer as ambassadors of I Love Black People. The COVID-19 update in Mozambique report is from 18th March 2022. The entrance test was 7,384,109. Form test was 1,287,922. Tested positive were 225,201. Tested negative were 1,062,721. Cumulative fatalities were 2,199. And total recoveries were 222,008. The report was prepared by Anna Karina from Mozambique. I am because we are.
I am because we are. You can present a report for Derek Musonda, our brother from Zambia.
Yes, on behalf of Derek Musonda, the report from Zambia, Pan-African History Saturday called Zoom meeting from 14th March 2022 to 18th March 2022. Activities were country representative and ambassadors were asked to give weekly reports and those available delivered their reports. Last Zoom meeting, we had interactive class session delivered by Professor Nana Akua and Dr. Tyrene Wright. Members were told to recommend Black people-owned businesses and Black-friendly businesses. Regular weekly news newsletter was shared, which highlights on our 8 essential categories, which is education, health, legal, finance, transportation, beauty, food, and accommodation, whereby members were told to submit their articles for publication if they are to be included in the weekly newsletter. Social media account was shared to group and members were encouraged to follow, like, and comment in all platforms. Members and ambassadors were encouraged to always attend our online Zoom event, which aims to build a global network to help and protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. Our moderator asked the members to prepare and submit their weekly reports. A sad note, on 11th March 2022, Zambia lost the 4th Republican President, Mr. Rupia Bwezani Banda, who has been mourned for 7 days. On 17th March, Rupia Banda was accorded a state funeral in Lusaka Showground, where most of the neighboring countries were in attendance. President Rupia Banda was put to rest on 18th March 2022 at the Embassy Park, a presidential burial site. Rupia Banda has been described as a peaceful man, loving, kind person. He was a beacon of democracy and fought for Africa independence. MHR. RIP Banda. Zambian COVID-19 update. The report is dated from 18th March 2022. The total confirmed cases were 315,623. Total tests were 3,322,571. Total recoveries were 310,706. Vaccinated doses were 1,143,624. Fully vaccinated, booster vaccinated were 52,393, and cumulative fatalities were 3,962. The report was prepared by Derek Msonda from Zambia, and I am Elijah Nyabuti reporting on his behalf. I am because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Brother Elijah. On next, I can see we are out of time, but would like our sister Melanoma to just give us a brief speech about the African Union and this celebration of 20 years. Yes, can you hear me, Melanoma? Yes, Yvonne, can you unmute Melanoma? Yes, sir. Can you unmute yourself? Yes, and now you are unmuted. You can go ahead. Sorry, you are on mute again.
I congratulate you all, my fellow ambassadors, members, lecturers, and co-founders of the I Love Black People. My name is Melanoma, based in Zimbabwe, presenting to you an analysis made by Paul Simon Hendy and Felicity Gilo, based at the Institute of Security Studies in Tshwane, Pretoria, entitled AU's Authority to Resolve Security Challenges in Africa. AU held a symbolic summit in Addis Ababa in February after nearly 2 years of online meeting due to COVID-19, signaling a growing confidence in the management of the pandemic. For the Ethiopian authorities, the summit was an opportunity to show the government's control over the fragile security situation in the country. AU Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Muhammad's opening speech was another positive surprise of the summit. He was uncharacteristically confrontational with the heads of the state, using lucid and courageous words to describe what he called the immensity of African paralysis with regard to neighboring homes that going up in flames. Park was referring to the AU's uneven peace and security record in 2021. 1 year after its commission was reformed and restructured, but he was also raising fundamental questions around the continental body's authority to weigh in on challenges to state stability. What does the AU need to exert more profound impacts on conflict situations? The time is right to ask these questions. As the body turns 20, protracted and emerging conflicts are testing the coherence of the AU's African peace and security architecture and its goal of silencing the guns by 2030. Based on philosopher Hannah Arendt's definition, authority, understood as the ability to obtain consent without coercion. As a continental organization, the AU draws its influence from the voluntary adherence of member states to the Pan-African project. But the government often don't the AU when it tries to enforce its authority, especially on early action and conflict prevention. When facing crisis, African governments often resort to various strategies to limit the AU's role. They politely reject its involvement in their international affairs, like Cameroon. Contest its action when it's already deployed in, like, e.g. Somalia. Sidelined it in favor of regional bodies, Central Africa Republic and Mozambique, or just prefer working with better resources internationally, e.g. international actor, e.g. Libya and Sudan. In interstate disputes such as those between Morocco and Algeria, Egypt and Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia, Rwanda and Uganda. For example, the AU struggles to mediate due to the uneven interest from the state involved. If we add the AU Peace and Security Council's inconsistent handling of unconstitutional changes of government in Mali and Chad, it could be argued that AU faces a decline of authority. However, the trend could be reversed if several structural and cyclical fragility were addressed. One systemic fragility is that the most African states oppose any interference in their internal affairs, while the AU has normatively shifted from non-interference position of its predecessor, the Organization of African Unity, to non-indifference. The gap between a proactive AU Commission and reluctant member states is huge. It causes inconsistencies in how the AU applies its rules and frameworks, which weakens the body. Another fragility is the relationship between members and the states and the AU. Unlike the European Union,
Sorry, Ambassador Nomalanga, we have a minute to round up. Unfortunately, you are out of time. My apologies for that.
Okay.
So we have a minute to round up.
All right. So the success of any trade agreement depends on the independence and impartiality of dispute settlement mechanism and the upholding of the decisions by signatory states. However, the US African had been uncomfortable with this decision of the regional legal bodies. Tanzania, for example, recently denied direct access to Africa Court of Human Rights which ironically headquartered in Arusha, it remains to be seen how AU member states response to the AFCFTA dispute mechanism decision. Thank you so much for listening. I love Black people because I am. And
I
we
am
are.
because you are. Thank you so
Yes.
much. We really appreciate your time, Ambassador Melanoma Langam. We appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. All right. On next, we're going to have a healthcare lecture from Nana Akua Zinzele. Yes, sir. Nana Akua, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good day, good day. How are you, Award?
I'm good, thank you. Welcome to our
Avon.
healthcare lecture.
Yes, greetings everyone. Greetings everyone. Thank you for turning your cameras on. I love seeing your beautiful Black faces. So good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So today's lecture topic is on stress release. And we have discussed this before. And if you're in the WhatsApp group, hopefully you have been able to review the handouts. And I've added some new ones since the last cycle. So we'll kind of go over those as well. But the reason I made this an entire section or lesson is because stress is oftentimes underrated. We often don't think of how stress impacts our health, but it can really, really affect how we are doing. And it's not just an emotional or psychological impact. It definitely has physical or physiological effects as well. So if you'll allow me to share, we're going to share the
Yes, you're allowed.
okay, great. And hopefully you can see the handout here. Of course, I have just done something to make it. Just when I think I have it right, it always has. Now, okay, so what are you seeing on the screen, Yvonne?
It's empty. You just opened a new tab.
I just closed.
Yes, you can. Oh, you can just click on the previous tab.
I thought I had that I did something. Okay, that wasn't it. I was about to be proud of myself. Oh wow. Oh gosh. I've showed all kinds of stuff there. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Lord. Lord, Lord, Lord. Hopefully there it is. Can you see it now?
Yes, common symptoms of stress.
So here we go. So just speaking in general, there are so many things that affect our health. And most times we're only thinking of a physical condition. We're only thinking about a particular pain in a part of our bodies or some other kind of physical symptom. However, stress can cause many illnesses. It can induce many conditions, illnesses, just stress alone. So we have to really give a lot of attention to how we're feeling. So not just how our body feels, but how our mind feels, how we are spiritually, how we feel emotionally, because all of these things are relative and related to our overall well-being. So in order to, of course, be able to address stress, we have to know when we are in fact feeling stressed. So a basic definition of stress is a state of physical or emotional tension or something inducing it. It is pressure or strain that tends to distort a body. And when we say a body, just a physical body, but something that distorts a thing. right, causes some kind of disruption, some kind of strain, some kind of stress to it. So stress can be many things. And these are some of the ways that it looks. Common symptoms of stress can be depression. It can be difficulty falling asleep. It can be extreme tiredness or fatigue. It can be feelings of anger or resentment. It can be frequent absences from work or other obligations. It may be impatience. It may be inability to concentrate. It may look like a loss of pleasure for life. It may look like an increase or decrease in your appetite. It may look or feel like muscular aches and pains for no apparent reason. It may look or feel like stomach or intestinal disturbances, indigestion, acid reflux, constipation, diarrhea. It may look like sweaty palms. It may look like tension or tension headaches. And it may look like performance anxiety, where you normally can perform or do a thing, but now all of a sudden you're feeling really anxious about it and you're feeling unable to accomplish something that you may have been doing all along. So these are some common symptoms of stress. And throughout this lecture, we'll talk about many ways to handle stress, but just sort of quickly, some of the methods here may include the relaxation exercises listed here below, but it may also be just general exercise. You may exercise your tension away. You may walk, run. You may do yoga. You may go to the gym, lift weights, any number of things you may do to actually physically get the tension out of your body. You may learn to deal with negative people. Sometimes we have stress because we have to deal with people who are not very pleasant. So you may choose to brush up on your communication skills. There are courses about dealing with difficult people, conflict resolution, mediation, you know, all sorts of character building exercises that kind of build you up and help you to deal with people who are not pleasant, who are not built up, who are not elevated in their thinking and their actions. You may join a community or social or recreational club. You may decide to volunteer your time. This is a good way to use idle time to focus your mind on something that will be beneficial to you and also other people. You may express yourself in different ways. Some people choose talk therapy. They need to talk to someone. A lot of times we vent and talk to our friends, but in some cases we may actually need to talk to a professional. Sometimes people need to or are more hands-on and they want to write down how they feel, and that's a way of expression. Some people draw or build things, but these are different ways to express yourself. You may also decide to reassess or change your lifestyle. Every so often, I would say at the very least, this is one way that we can connect to nature and the seasons, is to reassess your lifestyle, your pattern, your activities, your routine every 3 months, and devise a new plan if necessary. If you need to change up your schedule, when you get up, when you do certain things, when you go to bed, what days certain choice, but reassess whether or not your regular daily routine is working for you and make those adjustments when necessary. You may also decide to practice your spiritual beliefs, tap into your inner spirit, your innermost power, your own power. A lot of what we do here, at least for my class, is we talk, all of this is about empowerment, but you can take back your power when you tap into spirit, when you go inward, you find that inner strength, you pray, you meditate, you do self-help books or podcasts or videos, and really focus on who you are as a person and what it is that you can control. And we know that we can only control ourselves. And in this regard, we can control what we eat. We can control who we are around. We can control our reactions, our responses to our stressors in our lives. We can control how and when we cleanse and detox our bodies. We can control where we get our foods from, and we can even grow our own foods. We can decide to drink more water. do more healthy herbs as our teas, replace it with coffee, you know, replace herbs with certain drugs and those types of things. There's so many things that we can take power in. We can pray and use our spiritual strength and power to overcome obstacles. So all of this is about empowering ourselves so that we can feel better and handle our stresses. And then you may also decide, nurture yourself, pamper yourself. This can be going to get your hair cut, get your hair done, you know, get a manicure, a pedicure, get a massage, attend a yoga class, or get a Reiki healing session. Or this could be going on a walk by yourself, you know, or having lunch with friends if you usually work all the time and you know you don't get personal private time. But anything that you feel is comforting and nurturing and you're really taking care of yourself and doing something that really makes you happy, this is what you have to focus on. And nurturing and pampering yourself is very important to relieving stress. So these are just some of the ways in which to handle stress. This paper here is an added handout, and I really liked it because it has 101 ways to relieve stress. So of course I've listed some, but there are so many other ones, and some are really, really simple, right? Lie in a hammock, right? Listen to the birds, learn to say no. Wear earplugs when it's noisy so that you can drown out, you know, background noise or noise that's not helpful, you know, for you and not relaxing or comforting to you. Say if you're out about going to work, you're on the bus, you know, you're on some public transportation with a lot of people. Make a list and then follow through. Sing a song. Now that's one of my favorites. Whenever I'm stressed, music is always my savior, so to speak, right? It is always comforting, it's always healing to me. And I am a sing-along person, so that's a big one for me. But if it's listen to music, if it's play music, if you're talented and can play music, if it's sing along to music, if dancing is something that you enjoy, you know, always do whatever it is that you find really brings you joy. That's very, very important. And that just reminds me, because sometimes we don't always realize we have to put real thought into what makes us happy, what brings us joy. So I think it's a really, really good idea, even before you get stressed, right? So if you recall, I don't remember even which class, but I talk about a self-care plan, right? And it was a plan for what to do when you're not well, right? And it was really geared towards physical illnesses, right? But in terms of stress, what you can also do is figure out beforehand what things relieve your stress, what things are calming to you, what things really make you happy, so that you can easily refer to those things and you can get out that music. You can pull out that crystal, you know, or you can have in mind what trail you want to go and walk on, or where you want to sit out in nature, or what room you want to retreat to in your own home, you know, and what incense you want to burn, whatever it may be that helps you peace and joy. Want to sit down to, and there's so many things to incorporate with all of this, but I want to get down to the crystals, because sometimes we have trouble figuring out or how to get to our happy place or what makes us happy. One of the reasons I really love healing crystals is that they do just that. The energy and power from healing crystals, you know, God already put these intrinsic powers within them to promote different feelings or evoke certain emotions. So if, for example, you are trying to create more joy in your life, right? You may use crystals like citrine, which I'm really trying to find a picture. But you may want to find those crystals that help you get to that place. You may feel like, oh, I'm down on myself a lot, or I'm really sad or unaccomplished, or I feel like I really want to do more with my life and I want to, you know, be more accomplished. Oh my goodness.
Yes, I think Anana Kua faced the network challenges. She will join us momentarily. Let me just check with here. She did have network issues. Yeah, so there are some people who were asking about the application being on iOS or iPhone users. Hopefully, this coming week won't pass by before we launch it on iOS. So just look out for it. And also, I did share the link for those who don't have the application. ILoveBlackPeople Safe Places application on Android devices. You can download it. Just copy the link in the chat section, then you can go ahead and download it. Then on Facebook, we're going to share it in the comment section so that you can download and share it with your friends and family. We advise you to recommend safe places which are Black owned or Black friendly. If you don't know the place, even if it's nearer to you, if you're not so sure if it's Black owned or Black friendly, you can just skip it. And if you recommend it, we are going to authenticate it. Then we have it on our online digital guide on ILoveBlackPeople.com. There's some when we were still waiting for Nana Akua to join us to finish up the local lecture. After Nana Akua, around 5:45 Central African time, or 5:45 Central African time, we're going to have a Pan-African organizing class with Dr. Taryn Wright. So Nana Akua is back.
Okay.
Yes, Nana Akua.
Okay, my apologies. And I tried getting on my phone. I really have to get a new laptop. It will just cut off without notice.
Okay.
So let me leave my phone because now I'm hearing the background. Okay, my apologies. So let's hope I can get back to. That's how I can get back to the handout. Are you seeing my handout? Precautions. It's a handout about crystals. Are you seeing that?
Yes, we can see it now. Precautions.
Okay. Okay, so as I was saying, sometimes we need help to get to where we want to be. Because sometimes we may not really realize because we've not taken time and gone inward and really figured out what makes us happy, what we enjoy doing, because we get used to just what the daily tasks that we have, work, school, taking care of our families, things of that nature, making money, surviving, you know, so sometimes we need the help of crystals that will allow us to feel that joy, to recognize what makes us happy and those types of things. So, and I think the handouts that I have here, I did them in response to what addresses things like depression and anxiety and stuff like that. But one, for example, that I want to highlight is a crystal called citrine. So this basically introduces more sunshine in your life, right? So this is when you're feeling overwhelmed with life. You simply need to kind of unfold and unpack whatever's going on. And it boosts your confidence. So this is sort of a happy crystal, a crystal that invokes joy and happiness. It helps you improve your mood, helps you feel better about yourself. And it basically just helps you bring peace and relaxation to your mind, your body, and your spirit. So this is really good when you're feeling anxious or when you're feeling depressed, but also just when you simply want to just bring sunshine. And sunshine is a big thing for me. I often call myself, you know, Queen Sunshine or Queen Sunshine. One of my mantras is I create my own sunshine. Like that's a big, you know, I always reference my sunny disposition. You know, like these are things that I purposely do. I purposely call myself, say to myself, and it's very important because that's the world I'm creating. And, you know, what you may not know about me is I've had many years of, you know, being in the struggle and being a revolutionary and a militant kind of person. And, you know, that creates a certain type of feeling. And it's hard to do or live in this world and not have those feelings and not do that work. But you have to have balance, and you have to purposely balance that and find joy and happiness, even when there's a lot of struggle, when there's a lot of things that we have to fight, that we have to endure, that we're against as Black people. So I encourage you to look for any and every opportunity to find and bring in the sunshine. Okay, so that's one crystal that I want, you know, to highlight. Angelite is another one, and I keep saying that I'm gonna bring some of my crystals and do sort of a show and tell, if you will, right, to this room. But it's sort of like if you've heard my health care lecture about herbs, you know that it's so hard for me to just pick one herb or my favorite herbs, and I end up going through the list and I'll say, this is one of my favorites. Oh yeah, this is another one of my favorites. So I feel the same way with the crystals. It's like if I start trying to bring in, you know, crystals, I'm sure I'll have, you know, 20 crystals here that I'm trying to highlight or that I'm trying to show you. But I encourage you, because there's so many, just like there are so many herbs, there are so many crystals, so many crystallized formations that naturally occur from the earth that have healing powers, that it would be hard to just know everyone or have everyone or work with everyone, but start wherever you can, or wherever, you know, you are moved to start. Angelite, though, is another one that this one helps you if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling anxious, if you need to kind of uplift your energy. Angelite is good. Angelite is also used spiritually because it's said to help tap into your connection with spirit, you know, help you talk to spirits or angels. And it helps with those abilities when you need to tap into our ancestors, as we often do, and as we always do, really. And it really helps you to connect on a spiritual level to help bring that balance and to help bring that calm, because you get the wisdom, the energy, the power behind our ancestors to kind of address or go through whatever issues you're going through. So I really just wanted to tie that into knowing how to identify stress and then ways to alleviate it. I think using crystals is an excellent way in which to do that. And I kind of went out of order of how I have my handouts, but while it was on my mind and my heart to mention it, I wanted to do that. And so there are so many crystals, and I put this handout, even though these are not all labeled, but this just gives you, because if nothing else, for me, I just love looking at crystals. They're so beautiful. They're so colorful. You can get them in different shapes and sizes, made into different items or shapes. You can get them in forms of balls or spears or wands or angels, any number of shapes. They can be rounded, squared, you know, you can get them in pyramid form. So there's so many. And of course, those are all what we call tumbled or polished crystals, where they're kind of shaped and made into where you can kind of use them more easily, as opposed to some of the raw ones like this black tourmaline here. You know, the more raw ones that you can't necessarily keep or hold in your hand or put in your pocket or under your pillow as easily as some of the more smooth ones, you know, seeing here, you know. So that's just my bit about crystals, but I'll come back to that. But let me go back up. And in identifying stress, we have to identify ways in which to handle it, right? So we have there are different effects that I mentioned earlier that stress has on the body. So we know that it affects our glands. We know that it will interfere with how the body can handle stress. These handouts or these pages here deal with the physiological impact that stress has on the body. And I usually go over these, but I want to skip so we can do some different information this time. Same thing here. This handout talks about how anxiety impacts the brain and with the physiological effects it has. And it talks about some exercises and things that can be done. What herbs or herbal teas that are good for anxiety. We've discussed these before. This handout gives a tea recipe: valerian, passion flower, lemon balm, orange blossom, aniseed, peppermint. If you remember my conversations previously about anxiety, you know kava kava is my favorite herb when we're talking about anxiety or people who have panic attacks. But I also like this handout, which is a new handout that also gives you some of the homeopathic remedies in which to address anxiety. Aconite or aconitum, argentum, and calicarb. These are all homeopathic remedies that deal with anxiety. The ACON or ACON, you usually will see this listed, the abbreviated version. But this is for fears of large groups of people, fear of death or fear of ghosts or bad spirits. And this is when there's trembling or an elevated heart rate. This homeopathic remedy is great for that type of anxiety. The Argen, this is good for fears of test, aloneness, death, large and empty spaces or narrow spaces. This is for that type of anxiety. The calicarb is for fears arising in the evenings or at night, or fears of solitude, fears of illness, or fears of the future. So I like that this handout pointed out some of the homeopathic remedies that are good for specific types of anxiety. Also, we've, I think this is the handout where we usually talk about flower remedies. So instead of me going through that whole flower remedy chart, this gives some of the flower essences or flower remedies that deal with certain types of anxiety as well. Aspen is good for inexplicable, vague fears, premonitions or impending disaster, or when you just fear that something bad is about to happen. Right? Or cherry plum is good for fears of loss of control or certain fits of temper. Usually cherry plum is used for like children who have like temper tantrums, but of course we know that adults have temper tantrums, right? I know some full-grown adults that have temper tantrums and kind of lose control and have these fits, right? Mimulus is good for hypersensitivity, shyness, and phobia. You know, so various fears of different types of things. And then rock rose is good for paralyzing panic. Like if you just get so deathly afraid of something and you just cannot move, rock rose is the flower essence or the flower remedy for that. And also, you know, there is a 5-remedy cure called Rescue Remedy 5 or Rescue Remedy that combines 5 of those flower essences that's used for emergencies. So usually if there's some type of trauma or mental turmoil, you basically use, I always say 3 to 5 drops, but here it says 4 drops in a small glass of water. I put it directly under my tongue. You can put it in a little bit of water, but again, if you remember from last week, we talked about the difference between herbs and homeopathics. Homeopathics is taken what we call sublingually, where you put it under your tongue and it goes directly into your bloodstream because it is absorbed into the mucous membranes or the lining of the mouth. So you don't have to swallow and ingest it and it go through the digestive system. That's the benefit of homeopathically derived medicines. So same thing here with the Rescue Remedy 5. This, instead of adding it to water, you add it directly under your tongue and you get a quicker response, okay? And so these are just some other tips in terms of stress and anxiety. I added grief here as well, because we know that this has a mental impact. And grief is that has, you know, really hit us really hard in these last couple of years. But again, as a person, a Black person, an African person, we are always faced with grief and sorrow. And so these handouts will also give you information on how to handle grief and how to handle sorrow. Another flower remedy for grief is gorse. And that's in other handouts, so you don't have to remember, but some of the handout that specifically talks about flower remedies, there's also, you know, a listing of the 38 flower remedies. But anyway, there are other herbs that are listed here that help with grief. Chamomile, linden flower, things of that nature. Kava kava, I've already mentioned. Lemon balm, St. John's wort. These are all excellent herbs for grief. If you are if grief has caused you to just be mentally exhausted, having poor concentration, you may try one of the types of Chinese ginseng. And we know that there are different kinds, as we discussed that last week as well. Specifically here, they're suggesting Siberian ginseng that you can use, which kind of help support the nervous system and the adrenal glands. So understanding how grief, how stress, how anxiety impacts the body, we then move to, again, those very concrete things that assist us in managing stress. And so deep breathing or conscious breathing exercises are excellent for that. This handout basically just gives you the benefits of deep breathing exercises. And as I always say, thank God we don't have to think about breathing. We don't have to consciously do it, because it is one of those involuntary types of things, but we can also use it at the voluntary things, which is what we call conscious breathing. So you're purposely breathing, you're purposely doing deep breathing, conscious breathing exercises to get the full benefits of creating relaxation and healing in the mind and the body and the spirit. So we know that the benefits include things like detoxifying and releasing toxins. We know that it relieves tension. We know that it relaxes the mind and body and brings clarity. We know that it can relieve pain. We know that it strengthens the immune system. We know that it improves the quality of the blood. We know that it strengthens the lungs. One of the ways that we'll talk about next week in terms of detoxifying the body, when we talk about the lungs, one of the best ways to do lung detox, in addition to herbs and things of that nature, is deep breathing exercises. So it strengthens that lung muscle. It improves cellular regeneration and it elevates your mood. So breathing is very important. And there's so many different types of breathing, right? And this just gives more benefits to it, which I won't, go through, but I don't want you to really underestimate or underrate the power of the breath, okay? And I wanted to give all of the different options for breathing, right? So I have these next few pages talk about how to develop the breath. It even gives you a week by week step in terms of how to do that, how to learn how to breathe in, how to learn how to hold the breath, how to release the breath, different types of breath, lion breath, spoon breath, serpent breath, fire breaths. There's so many different ways and so many different levels to this. Some of you won't, of course, take to this and have an interest in all of this on a very specific level. But in general, I want you to always focus on your breathing and know that there's power in the breath. And so I wanted to add all of these, and some of them are crooked. I apologize. This is definitely from years ago of me cutting and pasting and kind of putting things together, because There's so many books and so many resources and references. Even now, when you can just simply now go to, you know, the internet and pull stuff off, you still will come across so many different pieces of information. Trying to really piece it together can be difficult. So what I've done, and this was from years ago, I pieced together all of the different types of breathing exercises. So there's alternate nostril breathing, there's angel breaths, there's fire breaths. And we always, well, not always, but we've done this a couple of times here where we've talked about fire breaths. And that's just one of the easier ones, I think, for me to explain or demonstrate, or that I'm just comfortable with. So let's maybe try that. We've done this before, so I'd like you to indulge me with this. Now, just as many books that exist, there are different practitioners and healers that use breath and do breathology training and conscious breathing exercises. Even with fire breaths, there are different methods in which to do it. So there may be a type of fire breath, or there may be in and out the nose type of fire breath. Right? So you can see, and I'm being really slow and intentional, right? Because when you do these types of breathing exercises, you're really circulating your oxygen really quickly, and sometimes you can get lightheaded. So I caution you about that, but I encourage you to start practicing, start implementing some of these breathing exercises. You can start with fire breaths, or you can start with angel breaths, or you can start with slow, deep breathing where it's more calm, where it's softer, whether it's slower. But whatever type of breathing you implement, I encourage you to do some type of conscious breathing work every day, especially if you are very busy, right? And I'm sure, because I resent when people add things to my plate. There's always things for me to do. I very seldom need someone to add things to my plate, right? But I want you to add this to your plate, right? So to speak, of things to do, because this can really improve the quality of your life. If you are stressed and overwhelmed, taking a breathing break can be really rejuvenating, and it can really, really help you finish out all of the other things that you have going on, right? So again, if you did something like the second set of fire breaths that I did, you may start with just doing a set of 10, right? So let's try that. And what I want you to do afterwards is just sort of then return to just a really slow, normal breathing, and just allow your body to feel all of the sensations, right? Because you are affecting change in your entire body. Now, God made us where we don't really have to do any of this work, right? Thank God, all of these parts, you know, every organ, every tissue, every gland, every cell works all on its own without your help. But when you can assist it, right? How powerful is that? And the fact that you can affect change, right? For the good in your body, that's awesome. And we should take every opportunity to do that. Every day with what we eat, what we put in our body. But let's also, we can bring calm and relaxation in the body. So let's say we started with 10 of the fire breaths in and we did that, and we just enjoyed how that felt after 10. Okay, ready, set, breathe. And just remain really still. Take slow, deep breaths, and allow our bodies to return to normal breathing. Short inhales. Exhale slowly. I don't know about you, but I'm having combining words. I'm tingling and having sensations in my arms, in my feet, but enjoy whatever the sensations are. And take a moment and then do another set, and then another set, and then another set. and just enjoy how you've been able to not only cleanse and purify your lungs, but how you've been able to kind of reset your mind, your body, and your spirit, and empower it to do the rest that you have to do for the day. Or if you're at the end of your day and you have set it up to be able to now rest better and more peacefully, you know, all of these breaths can evoke such healing change. Coming pages here just talks about a number of different breaths. The cooling breath. Here's another fire breath, the connecting breath. Okay, so this is for your information, the alternate nostril breathing. I think there are a couple of sections on that one. Sniff breathing. So there are many, and I won't, go over all of these, but I wanted to, I've really turned this around. But I really wanted to highlight the benefits of breathing. Okay, so now let's move on to the benefits of massage therapy. We know that touch is very important and it can be very healing. And of course, before anyone touches you, and really even before you're in anyone's space, you want to make sure that they feel good to you, that the energy is good, that it's someone that you trust, somebody that's come recommended, someone that's reputable in some way. Or even if you're just meeting or hearing of them in the first, for the first time, make sure that you feel comfortable and at ease with them. Right? And of course, make sure it's not you and just your anxiety because you're doing something new or meeting someone new. So that's when you would take a few breaths, right? Tap into spirit and see, okay, am I assessing this well? How do I really feel with this person? Do I want this person to touch me, right? But if you've gotten to a good place of someone that you trust to do some body work or some touch therapy on you, know that it can be really healing and beneficial. So some of the benefits of massage therapy. It reduces tension in the muscles. It enhances circulation. It eases muscle pain. It improves sleep quality. It improves joint mobility. It can relieve stress. Stimulates movement of the lymphatic fluids. It speeds healing of soft tissue injuries. It boosts immune function and improves mental alertness. All from massage, all from touch therapy, right? Did you know that? Okay. And so we know that there are self-massage or techniques you can do yourself, but of course, a good therapist that is good at massage. And there's so many different types of massage. Certainly, I encourage you to do that and find a good therapist. But even this handout gives some things that you can do yourself at home, some lower back, shoulder, and feet massage techniques. Reflexology, we know, is a specialized therapeutic foot massage that stimulates the various reflex points on the feet. But we know that it expands to the hands and it expands to the ears, okay? So these handouts will give you the areas of the ears, the hands, the feet, and where or what parts of those parts correspond to the various parts of the body. So if you are not into or not able, so some people, their flexibility is not that great, could be from just joint pain or just not being very flexible. It could be for excess weight, but you may not be able to do comfortably foot reflexology. Then you may focus on hand reflexology or the ear reflexology. But if you notice here, there are different parts of the hands, for example, that correspond to different parts of the body. So if you're having headaches, if you're having sinus problems, then you may focus on the tips of your fingers. If there are issues in your spine or your lower back, then you know that there are different parts along the bottom of the hand that you may focus on. So on and so forth. But these handouts will show you what parts of your body that you can do self-massage on that will give relaxation and create healing throughout your entire body, okay? I've talked about the crystals. Let's talk about sleep. A lot of times, you know, especially overachievers or very busy people who don't value sleep, right? And think that they can operate off of 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I know many people like this. Let me just tell you, you are wrong right off the bat. It doesn't matter if you're able to function and do a full day of work off of 3 or 4 hours, your body will eventually break down. Your adrenal glands is what allows the body to utilize energy properly and handle the different stressors that you give it to face. And eventually you will experience adrenal burnout, because one of the best ways to treat adrenal or improve your adrenal health is with sleep, with proper rest. Okay, so there's no way around it. Many times when I was practicing and helping, you know, consulting people, everyone would ask, what can I do for energy? What can I do for energy? I need more energy. And I would always first go to their sleep routine or their sleep pattern. You have to first focus on, are you giving your mind, your body, your spirit enough rest? You have to get good sleep. It doesn't matter what herb you take. Now people are doing these 5-hour energies and these monster drinks and these sodas that have these stimulant herbs and things in them. None of that will help you if you do not get proper rest and sleep. So sometimes people are unable to do that because they are experiencing insomnia. So we know that, again, sometimes we need herbs or crystals or other natural healing modalities to assist us with what we need. So moonstone, howlite, opal, ruby, these are some of the crystals that are good for insomnia, right? You can place them by your bed, you can put them under your pillow, you can do your breathing exercises with them in your hand before you go to bed. But combine a couple of different things that may assist you when you are trying to get rest, because you want good quality rest and you want it for the amount of time that you need it. And if you're doing anything less than 6 hours, because we know that we need really at least 8, but if you're doing anything less than 6, you're definitely doing your body a disservice, okay? Sapphire, sugarlight, celestite, these are also good for promoting relaxation and helping with sleep. There are even crystals for folk who have sleep apnea, which is like interrupted breathing or the inability to breathe throughout the night while you're sleeping. These are quartz, jasper, lapis lazuli. So there's so many things, even folk who snore, but all of this is important. And I wanted to include these because as with a lot of things, we take sleep for granted. We don't think that sleep is as important as it is. But we have to get good rest. That is the only way that we can handle stress. And it was brought to my attention that I had not included this in previous discussions about handling stress, just talking about what herbs to use. Even we've talked about even like nuts and seeds and certain foods that are high in the minerals and, you know, calcium and magnesium and things like that will also help with sleep. And I haven't talked about getting good sleep for handling stress and anxiety, but this is very important. So incorporate the breathing exercises, incorporate the self-massage, incorporate the crystals, all of these things. Drink your herbal tea, but whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that you're getting good sleep, that is what you need to do. So there are many handouts there were several pages as you saw me scroll by that talked about sleep. So utilize crystals, utilize sedative herbs and things like that to help with that as well. And I think the next section is about, and aren't they beautiful? I tried to get some in color. I think crystals are so beautiful, if nothing else. If you didn't even do healing work with them, so to speak, they just beautify your space. And I've been collecting crystals for years, and I found myself putting them in little cases and setting them aside someplace. And just very recently, I started so most of them are now in my bedroom. Not all of them. Some are not great to have in your sleeping space, for example, but like turquoise, for example. But there are others, and I just love them in my space. I feel so good. It's changed the energy and the flow and everything in my room. So for nothing else, they're just so beautiful. And I tell you, did I mention I'm coming to Tanzania, and there's Tanzanite that's mine there. So whoever that's on this call from Tanzania, I would really love, I'm asking that you look into that for me. And you be on hand when I get there, right? We got a couple of months. Look into that. If you've never heard of it, you're not familiar with caves where they mine crystals, look into that for me, right? That's my request. That's my humble request. Sinclair is always like, humbly, humbly, humbly. Let me say, humbly, humbly, I am requesting that somebody find where I can go and mine some crystals, or go into some caves and see some crystal formations. And I'm specifically looking for Tanzanite, which is found in Tanzania. Okay, so let's get past the crystals. I could talk about crystals all day, just like I could talk about herbs. So the flower remedies I mentioned earlier, I will not go over each of these, but you have this handout. These are the essences of the flowers on trees and shrubs that balance the emotions. So it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be resentment, it could be despair, it could be grief, it could be any number of emotions. And if you're having any of these, as negative or as bad as it sounds and feels, there is a remedy that can help bring your emotional state, your emotional health back into balance. And so there are 38 what we call English flower remedies. And these are all for your disposal. Use them when you know emotionally you are just not feeling well. You're not at balance. You need something to help you get out of the rut, get out of, ever low place you're in. There are flower remedies that will help you to do that. And again, I mentioned it briefly at the top of the class, but if you also then need to speak with someone, if you need mental health therapy or mental health counseling, get that. There is no weakness in that. Get talk therapy. Go to a professional that can help you process your emotions, help you process how you are feeling, and give you tools to handle this, because that can also kill you. People take their lives every day because they felt overwhelmed, or they felt ashamed to ask for help, or to admit that they were feeling a type of way. So if even these things will not or cannot assist you, or you're beyond going and getting a crystal or drinking some herbal tea or using a flower remedy, if you're beyond that and you need help, or you're kind of stuck and don't know where to start, get a professional helper with that. One thing that we included in the Global Brain Book under the holistic practitioners is we have many mental health therapists that are listed there as well. So we didn't just focus on people who do healing of physical ailments, of physical conditions. We talked about and listed mental health professionals as well. Okay. So these are some calming herbs. We've talked about a lot of these. I won't go through these because I see there are a lot of comments, so I am going to try to grab a few of those. But know that there are flower remedies, there are herbs, there are homeopathic remedies that will help heal the nervous system. They will act as herbal natural sedatives that will calm you down if you're feeling anxious, that they will balance you out if you're feeling depressed, that they will uplift you if you're full of grief or sorrow, that they'll calm you if you're having anxiety or panic attacks like this kava kava that's listed here. So there's so many tools that we have. So I wanted to kind of include all of these things. And then, again, if you're having trouble identifying whether you're stressed or not, or in what areas you're stressed, this handout will let you figure out, well, is this a physical thing? Is this a spiritual thing? Does it have to do with my relationships? Is it emotional? Is it mental? So I encourage you, go through this list and make sure you can identify whether you're stressed and in what areas you're stressed in, so that you can pinpoint what to do. I do think it's being recorded. Someone's asking about recording. Light more fire, okay. And I'm just reading through the comments. Yes, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And as always, and Award, maybe you can list how people can be added to the group. I know Frederick is asking how to be added to the group. Oh, okay, I think you did list it. Okay, so the previous comment talks about that. So hopefully he went back and can see what to click on to be added to the list. Awesome, and I'm always, the reward is you being able to utilize what I'm saying. So I'm very grateful and humbled if it's something that I'm saying that's useful to you and hopefully healing for you. Oh, thank you, Award. So yes, my email is listed here. I usually type it in. Thank you for doing that, Award. nanaakua1@gmail.com is how you can reach out to me if you need the handouts that we are using here. Okay, yeah, thank you, Award. It looks like you've gone through the handouts and kind of responded as necessary. So that's excellent. Because that seems to be the question. So I'm getting some crystal. Yes, I love crystals. And that's a gift I give to my children. My girls have taken to it. That seems to be something that they have joined me with. A love for crystals and herbs. And, I've taught my daughter, oldest daughter, to make candles and make soaps, and we now make jewelry. I've been, for spiritual purposes, I've made beads and things for a long time, but now we're making waist beads and anklets and bracelets and things of that nature, only with crystals. I only use crystals. I mean, I love all the bead markets in Ghana that I've been to, and I'm sure I'll go to in other countries, but I love crystals so much, I incorporate the energy from those crystals into any of the jewelry that I make. So I only use the crystal beads as opposed to some of the old style African trade beads or glass beads or even plastic beads, but I use primarily crystals. But anywho, next week we will talk about detox and cleansing. And there are some new handouts from that. So if you joined us before and listened in on that lecture, know that there will be additional handouts in terms of how to cleanse and detox the body. And again, identify for yourselves what may be causing stress. Do that little checklist at the end of the packet and, really identify how it is that you're doing. And I always say when I'm talking about the flower essences that the most frequently asked question is, how are you? And I always say that the most frequent lie that people tell is that they are fine, right? Because most people, it's robotic, it's second nature. You just say, I'm fine, right? So the very few words I know in tree, right, is, Wahuta saying or Etta saying, how is it, right? And I just know Boko, like I know everything is fine. But what if something's not fine, right? But my limited tree is that I don't even know the answer to that. And nobody thought to teach me that because we often will just say we're fine, right? So we have to learn to be honest, and not in every space, right? In your safe spaces, really evaluate how you're doing. And when you are not fine, do those things that we've discussed today to get back to that place of being well and not just making it, not just surviving, but thriving. And that's what I want for all of us. So as we continue to fight for, the end of racism and xenophobia, we want to continue to be well and thrive in everything that we're doing in this process of getting there. So thank you for joining us and listening in to me. I appreciate the love, and I'll see you all next week. If you're in the group, I'll be posting things. If you reach out to me via email, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And as always, I bid you good health and peace, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much, Nana Akua, for your wonderful lecture. Hopefully we won't be affected with stress anymore due to these lectures. I will appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend too. Yes, thank you everyone who attended the healthcare lecture. Moving next, we're going to have Pan-African Organizing History class. with Professor Dr. Tyreen Wright. Yes, Dr. Wright, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Okay, hold on. Let me mount my camera and you should see me momentarily. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello. So welcome to the Pan-African History. Hold on, okay. Welcome to the Pan-African History and Ideological Training course. So Pan-African History and Organizing, right, which is our ideological training course. So I wanted to start off, let me just say, I'm doing things a little bit different this time around in the sense that normally I give the chapters out and then I go back and review them and we talk about it. But what I'm doing this time around is something a little bit different, which is like basically sharing the information after I give a synopsis so that the students in the course, they know exactly what you're reading, as opposed to reading it first and not quite understanding, and then getting, you know, an explanation later on. I'm trying to figure out how to keep my camera from like falling. Okay, so what we're going to cover this week are two of the evidentiary chapters that we're going to cover in the course, meaning that there are two pivotal cases that Booker T. Washington is involved in. And please don't get caught up on him, because I noticed like there's a resurgence of this conversation about Washington. My book is about to be republished. And there's people who are like, you know, fixating on this whole Washington boys, that conversation. Please don't do that. We're just using him as an entry point, as we use so many other, you know, individuals to enter into a conversation about the practice and even the theory of Pan-Africanism. And so, we can have those conversations, because I am an author of a book that does, you know, give you a different view of Washington, but I don't want to fixate on that, because really what we're here to talk about is Pan-Africanism and the concrete examples of Pan-Africanism. And it's much needed, because what happens is since we don't know the concrete examples, then we can't build on them, right? We can't model them. Right. So at another time, you guys want to have the conversation about proponents. And I do get to a point in this course where I do discuss the proponents of Pan-Africanism, but this is not exactly the moment, right? So today I'm gonna introduce two cases to you. First, the Liberian crisis, and then the other, the African exclusion measure. And then I'm going to briefly talk about the Togo expedition. And the reason why I'm putting it in context like this is because I see people who are interested in having these conversations around some of these cases, but they don't really understand the cases. And two of the three cases I mentioned are really unknown, largely outside of maybe some work that I've done. And they should be elevated as models. So first off, I'm going to share, but I will start with something called the Liberian crisis. I'll be sharing that in the group actually as we speak. And there'll be points where I'll share my screen so that you can see it. In 1907, just to set the stage, there was a situation in Liberia, West Africa, where the French and the British decided that they wanted to annex the territory. Why? Because, you know, after 1883 or 4, you had, of course, the scramble for Africa by European nations. And they were very much intolerant of any African nation being, or any African territory being independent and uncolonized by them. That being said, you have Liberia, the territory known as Liberia, which was not colonized by the French, the British, or the Germans, and therefore many felt as though they wanted that territory. Those European powers wanted that territory as well, and they did. In 1907, what they do is threaten European nations fighting over African territory on the ground in Africa. They threatened to annex that territory that is known as Liberia. Now, it was informally at that time known as Liberia because it had not constituted itself as an African nation per se. 1847, going further back, is when the American Colonization Society basically affirms Liberia as a territory to send back African people who were previously enslaved here. But going forward, essentially, it was not recognized by European powers. I don't want to belabor the point, but the idea is just this. These colonial powers, the French and the British, appealed to the United States repeatedly to say, are you interested in Liberia? Do you want this territory? Because if not, we're going to take it. Okay, never mind about the African people who actually live there. If you all don't want this territory, we will seize it. And so the United States repeatedly responds to Liberia, to these colonial powers and says no, right? Citing something called the Monroe Doctrine, basically saying that we're not interested, the United States is not interested in territories in Africa at the moment, okay? At the moment, because if you understand the United States and how they function, you would know that that's only a temporary thing until they understand how to exploit the territory. So the United States had not figured out how to exploit the territory. Therefore, they wanted they had no stakes in it. That being said, two things were going on. On the continent of Africa, you had the French and the British vying for control, right, of the territory, trying to annex portions of what is Liberia, and threatening to imitate each other. But within Liberia, there was something else going on, which was that you had African people who had survived the institution of slavery resettled there by a racist organization called the American Colonization Society. It's a shame, it's a whole nother conversation, and I'm gonna address Garvey and all of that, but this is the first successful Back to Africa movement. Although Garvey would have his movement and others, the most successful Back to Africa movement was created and enacted by Europeans, racist Europeans in America, who wanted to send African people in the US back to Africa. And of course, African people who wanted to go back to Africa were aligned with that. They could care less about the intention so much of the organization and more so about, hey, if I can get back to Africa and leave the United States, I will do so under whatever auspices. So this population that we'll dub or has been historically dubbed as the Americo-Liberian population is on the ground in Africa, having been resettled, as I said, by the American Colonization Society, and is in conflict with some of the indigenous African populations and ethnic groups on the ground who had never been displaced. The reason this conflict exists is because, yes, unfortunately, they did not have ideological development. This is why we do stuff like this. There was no ideological development and training to prepare them to return back to Africa. So you have this dynamic where Americo-Liberians are engaging in discriminatory practices and marginalizing the indigenous African populations there. So if you guys, those of you who were on the African, hey, Rafi, hey, if those of you who have asked me about ethnic conflicts and issues, This is one of them. This is one of ethnic conflict, and it would be actually the seed of ethnic conflict on the continent of Africa, particularly in Liberia going forward, right? It would be the seed that would set the tone for the disruption that the 13-year war and some of the other wars are actually rooted in, right? Why are all of the political figures in Liberia coming from the Americo-Liberian population, the Taylors and the Johnsons? All of them are essentially Americo-Liberians who marginalized the indigenous Liberian person who had never been enslaved or displaced, and set up it on a systematic level. So there are serious grievances between the two groups, or between one group and a multitude of ethnic groups on the ground. That being said, the United States has their Navy sit off the coast, occasionally coming on land, inland, to put down conflicts between these two groups. Outside of that, the United States is not involved in any of the dynamics on the ground in Liberia, and does not want to state any real claim to it, because to state claim to Liberia is to give economic support as well, right? In a world such as the one we live in. So to say you support so-and-so means that you are also going to send some monies to so-and-so and support their cause and finance it to some extent. And the United States is not interested in doing that at all, okay? Therefore, they would never stake claims to Liberia at that moment in time, but will lend military support on the ground occasionally, okay? Sort of surveilling what's happening inland. That being said, the larger conflict of the French and the British attempting to annex the entire territory is much more of a threat. And it causes a man named Ernest Lyons to contact Booker T. Washington in particular. Why? Because he wants to see if Washington can spearhead negotiations to basically bring it in to the attempts by the French and the British to take the territory, take the nation, okay? What this case is really all about is the survival of an African nation. And so with Ernest Lyons' appeal, Booker T. Washington does get involved. He, at the time, is the advisor to, he's an advisor to Roosevelt and incumbent, not incumbent, President-elect Taft and incumbent President Theodore Roosevelt. So he has their ear. Doesn't mean that they are somewhat, or that they're even aligned and can understand each other, but he does have their ear. He is an advisor to both of them. That being said, he is, I'm going to just jump to, so you know, I'm just giving you this synopsis so you know what you're actually going to be reading. What the case is, and it's a pretty long case, and you'll see it, I'll be giving it to you in PDF format. The case basically covers the whole long, protracted negotiations that take place over several years in order to secure the fate of Liberia. And you see basically Washington become a very skilled, he's already a skilled negotiator, but he's negotiating for the fate of an African nation. Now, why would this be Pan-Africanist? This would be considered Pan-Africanist. Why? Because ultimately, what? It is to the benefit of African people, right? They will secure the nation. However, don't be oblivious to the nuances that I highlight at the ends of the case, which lets you know just the dimensions of the deal, meaning that the deal is not the best deal, but it is the only deal going in the preservation of Liberia. Okay, there were no other people who could hold on, hang on, and bring negotiations to secure Liberia a nation to conclusion other than Booker T. Washington. And for those of you who understand what nationalism is truly about, so let me just pause there. Here in the United States, many of us talk about nationalism and Black nationalism, but we don't really have a handle on what nationalism is about. Nationalism is about initiating and preserving one's nation. It's not about having all Black businesses in a Black neighborhood. It's not all about just, asking anybody for anything. Can you give us a little piece of your existing nation? It's not simply call yourself a nation. Nationalism is the willingness to and the ability to take land and hold it. Okay, that's what real nationalism is actually about. If you talk to people who have been involved in struggles that are nationalist struggles, particularly on the continent of Africa, they understand that they're not doing a bus boycott. They're not. They're not. Boycotting a business in particular, a specific business. They're not, begging for loans for businesses in their neighborhood. They're not asking for anything. Nationalists are interested in only one thing, and that's land, so that they can forge nationhood. You own the nation, that you can take care of all those other things, right? Food, shelter, you can create industry. So Booker T. Washington, funny enough, understands this. He knows that the franchise that is Liberia is very precious as a nation, and is needs to be preserved, okay, above all else, right, for it to function and to continue to function as a nation. He recognizes that at that time in 1907, 1908, when contact is initiated, that Liberia is only one of two independent African nations on the continent of Africa at the time. The other only independent African nation uncolonized is what? Ethiopia, right? And we know that a portion of Ethiopia is annexed by the Italians and becomes present day Eritrea. So what Washington is trying to prevent is something similar to that, for the British and the French to not get any part of present day Liberia, okay? And so the negotiations are along those lines. This case, just to give you some tidbits in the course of the case, this case will sort of challenge what you think about Washington in the American context and his position on voting, because he leverages the Black vote in respect to white politicians in order to get them to take a position on Liberia. In other words, loosely, don't quote me, but loosely, you'll see a statement in there in the case by Washington to Theodore Roosevelt and Taft saying, whatever you do or fail to do with respect to Liberia will be remembered by 4 million Negroes, use that term unfortunately, but I'll say African people in America, come voting time. Whatever you do or fail to do. In other words, when you do nothing, we will remember that too. Now, interestingly enough, I mean, he's propagandizing, and it's very interesting how he does that, because in public realm, and of course this is all behind closed doors, because if you know anything about the figure that Washington was, most of what he did was done clandestinely. And I think, we probably should take a page out of his book for that, but this is said behind closed doors, and the word publicly is that he is not an advocate of social and political rights, voting and all that, but that's not necessarily the case. What is pressing you politicians on behind the scenes is their legislation and their policy making around the preservation of Liberia. And he's saying, whether true or not, we don't know if the average African person in America who is voting in 1907, struggling to vote in 1907, 1908, is facing Africa. However, that's what he's telling US white politicians, right? You don't take care of Liberia, our Black voters, our African voters in America will not take care of you. So it's one of his tools of negotiation, but there are others there. It, like I said, it's a long, protracted case, so enjoy it. However, he brings it, it is sort of a marathon. And so he's showing that he can do long-term negotiations and bring a case full circle to the benefit of African people. Ultimately, you know, as you live in the present, that Liberia is still an African nation. It was not annexed by the French or the British. So you must assume that Washington is successful in his attempt to preserve the nation and stop it from being annexed. But I do want you to just remember the energy of the conference of Berlin and that period in time where Europeans are doing a mad dash for Africa, taking territories in Africa. Almost nothing in Africa is untouched by European colonialism. And so this was a push against the tide, so to speak, because most of the African continent was colonized at that point. Okay, so that's one case, and I'm trying to actually post the case in here, so I just want to see something. All right, then the other case that we are going to cover and you will get today is also the African exclusion measure, which is the legislation that was produced by the Senate in 1914. 1 second, good, all right, finally. It's legislation that was produced in the Senate in 1914. And it basically was designed to lock anyone of the African or Black race out of the United States forever, okay? I'm sharing the library crisis right now. But it was meant to lock out African people from the United States, not just from the Caribbean, which it was targeting, but from, okay, good. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just making sure that this is posting properly. So it was not only meant to lock out African people from coming from the Caribbean, but it would cover everybody, the Caribbean, Central and South America, okay? So Washington, once again, key negotiator in this case, and you get to see how he influences the case and basically eliminates this legislation, racist legislation produced by the Senate at that time. So I'm just gonna give you a couple of details about it. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to make sure that I send you the documents in real time, which is something I like to start doing because sometimes things get a little intense during the week. All right, so let me just give you the key points, and you should see the librarian crisis in the case, in the course right now if you're in the WhatsApp group. But let me go into the details of the African exclusion measure. So the African exclusion measure is initiated in really 1914. And it's interesting because a lot of people miss this point and period in American history. In 1914, something happened that was important. And that was that the Panama Canal was completed. It is something that many other nations had tried to do in the past, which is build something that would cross over the land that is known as South or Central America in order to open up the waterways, the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, so that people don't have to go around those large land masses known as North and South America, okay? Well, others would try it, the French would try it, but under Theodore Roosevelt, the US would try it. And this attempt would actually move the United States into the realm of being a world power. Completion of the Panama Canal would happen in November of 1914. And if you don't, I mean, you should look it up if you don't know what it is, but basically they cut across the land in Central America, which at the time was Colombia. But the United States is I wouldn't even say a peculiar nation, is a certain kind of capitalist nation. They know how to exploit conflict in the region. So Colombia, a Western nation established by the Spaniards, of course, racialized, has racial conflict in the region, and the Black population in there are fighting in resistance to Colombia, its nation. The United States fuel that conflict of the Black population and allow them to establish their own country, which is what? Panama. Panama used to be a part of Colombia. So this resistance is able to declare itself sovereign, and the United States can negotiate with this new territory in order to cut through it, have this engineering project where they cut through it, cut through the mountainous region, and then build up locks, big, huge locks where they flood with water that lifts ships over this landmass. So basically the ships go over land with this engineering mechanism. Well, in order, Colombia probably wouldn't have given the United States permission to do it. However, they don't have to negotiate much because them financing what would be the seed of Panama would allow them to do it, right? So they have a new nation and they are doing this through the auspices of their relationship with that new nation, with that new nation called Panama. That being said, in 1914, the Panama Canal was completed. And the laborers on the Panama Canal were largely African and Black people from the Caribbean, Central and South America. Okay, let me say that again. The laborers on this American engineering project down in Panama, Central America, were largely people from the Caribbean, Central and South America, Latin America as well, but definitively the laborers were African and Black people. White people working on this project were largely the administrators. And yes, it was segregated. Living quarters on the Panama Canal were segregated. That being said, when the canal was completed, the United States wanted to send a clear and open message to the African and Black population that had participated on the building of the Panama Canal through legislation. And the message they wanted to send was, thank you for your labor. No, thank you on the question of immigration. In other words, they had figured because this population had been paid in US dollars, they would have gotten used to US wages. And the next step for them would have been to initiate immigration to the United States. The United States wanted to make it abundantly clear that we were not me, that they were not welcoming in any African or Black people who had labored on the Panama Canal. Side note, I just want to, this is a very interesting point because I used to teach at a school that was predominantly African people from the Caribbean. And there was a little running joke that white Americans preferred those from the Caribbean. This case lays bare questions like that. because what will happen is that the African exclusion measure would have been provoked and designed to keep just that population out of the United States. Okay, so there is no preference when we deal with white supremacy and culture. That's just that's a mind trick, right? A manipulation tool that is used to plant in the population in order to think that, you know, any African or any Black person is preferred by Europeans or white people, you know, and it's not true. That being said, US politicians would put pen to paper to make this happen. On the Panama Canal was completed in November of 1914. The Senate would not waste a second and would not even wait until the new year came in and would initiate legislation in the Senate with an amendment to the larger immigration bill saying to exclude anyone, the Black or African race, from the United States forever, okay? Anyone who was Black or looked African would not be able to immigrate into the United States from 1915 on. Not 2015, 1915, 106 years ago, 107 years ago now. That being said, this legislation not only provoked or invoked that racist ideology, it would put in it that those attempting, African and Black people attempting to immigrate to the United States would be categorized and classified as undesirables and criminals attempting to enter the country. Let me say that again. Based on race and physical appearance, the people who are identifiably Black and culturally African would be put in the same category as criminals and undesirables attempting to enter the United States and would therefore be denied. So here you see in US legislation, criminalizing African people, Black people based on racial categories and based on genealogy. And it's on the books. This amendment to the larger immigration bill of 1915 would be initiated by a man named James Reed out of Missouri. Sound familiar? I mean, not the name, but Missouri. I'm not, too surprised if you guys know about Missouri in the news and what's been happening in Missouri for the last couple of years, but just historically, right? It's that southern state in the north. It was the subject of the Missouri Compromise, right? It's above the Mason-Dixon line, but it was a slave state. That being said, it has a long history, as does the United States, of vile acts and forms of, displays of racism. So James Reed proposes this in the Senate without much of a debate. It passes on December 31st, 1914. They didn't even wait for the new year to come in before proposing this. They said the Panama Canal is finished in November. We're gonna get this measure in before the year is out, period, okay? It is voted on, and it passes in the Senate without debate and with flying colors. No resistance. So it was due to go to the House of Representatives. Now, let's get a little more in depth in terms of what the African exclusion measure would do. The African exclusion measure would not only lock out African people and Black people from the Caribbean, Central and South America, but it would lock out any African person or identifiably Black person out of the United States from 1915 on. And at the time, there was a steady flow of students coming from the continent of Africa to the United States to attend Tuskegee Institute. Booker T. Washington was watching the congressional record. He wanted to preserve the flow of African people to and from Tuskegee, be it the Caribbean, and even more importantly, I have to say, he was specifically interested in keeping his flow of students coming from the African continent. That being said, he would see this initiation of this measure and the possibility that it was going to be approved in the House as a threat to the steady flow of students to the school, to the institute. And so he is very poised to oppose it. I'll give you, you have to read the case for yourself, so that is what you will be doing this week. But he opposes it in 3 ways, pronounced ways. He challenges it in the press. He goes to the public on this issue. He has significant control of the Black press, and that is well known. And he would propagandize against the measure in the Black press. He also would basically appeal to politicians that he knew personally, that this measure was going to be coming before the House of Representatives and that they needed to vote against it and be decisive in their vote against it, that this could not happen. And then lastly, he puts together, not even together, he activates what already existed, which is something called the Tuskegee Machine, which was a secret network of power brokers that Washington, I wouldn't say affiliated with, but actually led. And he would charge them with going to Washington and directly challenging US politicians, entering the House, meaning Congress, at the Capitol, and polling US representatives, congressmen and women on this particular measure. Washington's words would end up on the floor of the House of Representatives in a ferocious debate around this issue. And through a representative from New York in particular. And so his position on it, the fact that he would highlight all the nations that would be impacted by this, and then argue that the African population, lucky for them, white Americans and America at large, have never been adverse. Okay, have never destroyed the nation from within. And so there was no reason for, on that basis alone, there was no reason to systemically lock out African people from other parts of the world, as though they would come and destroy or capitalize in a way that would not ultimately benefit this country, right? And so he argues this point, and he has his words via a congressman from New York on the floor of the House. And what's in the case is that you will read this ferocious debate between both sides about the immigration of African people into the United States, particularly, right? This is not a legislation that would oppose a particular nation. This is legislation that would oppose a people and many ethnicities, all based on racist ideology. So it is Booker T. Washington who, between January 1st and January 7th of 1915, would launch a both public and very private campaign against this and defeat this legislation. It is the very reason why people like Marcus Garvey would be able to enter the United States just 1 year later in March of 1916. Had Washington failed to eliminate the African exclusion measure, Garvey would not have been able to enter the United States 1 year and 2 months later. And nor would most of the people that we know, whether you like him or not, there would not have been no Barack Obama because his father would not have been allowed into the United States, on and on and on. There would not have been our beloved Malcolm X, whose mother family was from the Caribbean. we would not have had Nkrumah come here to school and then return to Ghana and lead his nation towards independence. Ezekwe, Fela, all of the, all of them would not have been able to enter the United States had it not been the African exclusion measure not been opposed and defeated by none other than Booker T. Washington, a very unlikely figure. Yes, Du Bois opposed it, Monroe Trotter opposed it, but Booker T. Washington is the person with the measurable power, hence in the form of the Tuskegee machine. And you'll read the details of how he does this. But he has power. And it's irony because that particular power, that network that he had, is something that he was largely criticized for. But in this instance, it is working on behalf of African people internationally, right? And against the US government and its racist policies. Let's be very clear. So we're here to talk about what is and what isn't Pan-Africanist. The first case, Liberia, we understand to preserve an African nation, it has to be Pan-Africanist because of the simple fact that it doesn't get better than that in the sense of what one wants to have as a nationalist, right? To preserve an African nation. That is above preserving a block, preserving your business, saving your house, saving your car, initiating a school. To preserve an African nation is above all of that, okay? However, this case with African exclusion measure is Washington preserving the right of African people to move freely around the world and in and out of the United States, and yes, to their benefit very often. It was certainly, he stood nothing to gain from it personally, except for to keep Tuskegee having a steady flow of students coming from throughout the African world. But there is a very clear understanding that the African and Black population that would come to the United States would do so on the basis of trying to gain employment, education, and so on and so forth, okay? And I want us to note that there is not a begrudging relationship between Washington, who is advocating for African people to be able to move in and out of the United States freely, and himself, or the African population within the United States, is not opposing the African populations outside of the United States from coming into the United States. We need to be really careful about this because we do not understand early Pan-Africanism in that way, in terms of the sentiment. There is no animus between us as Africans in the United States and Africans in the Caribbean, Africans in the United States and Africans in Central America or South America. There's no animus between Africans within the United States and African people on the continent of Africa. At this moment in time, Washington fights tooth and nail to preserve the ability of Africa, preserve and increase the ability of African people in all of those international locales, ability to come into the United States without the United States locking their doors conclusively to them. And so this is how we have to function with regard to each other, okay? We're not each other's competition. We're not. That being said, he is obviously, this is a case that's notable because he is able to preserve, right, African mobility and immigration into the United States. All right. And he does so within 7 days. If he had to work through some issues like who's African, who's Black, because as we know, there are many people in Latin America today who do not consider themselves African, and just now are coming to the conclusion or coming closer to Blackness. okay? But Washington was very clear, and so was the United States government. The United States government said anyone of the African or Black race. So they don't care who you think you are. They've already categorized you. And not only that, they have categorized you because of culture and physical features, right? Race, the construct of race, but even more, criminalize that population, putting them in the same category as criminals and undesirables attempting to enter the country. Nobody but Booker T. Washington challenged successfully and defeated that measure, period. Now, there's another case. So what do we gain? We were able to preserve the freedom of African people who are the humans on this earth. As we started this class, that was the point of me sharing the journey of man's genetic odyssey. When I say African, you should think human first and foremost, right? Not just human, but the humans for the better part of 200 to 300 years on this earth. Let's be very clear about that part, right? So Washington is able to preserve that, okay? And it's notable. Now, let me just say this, because there are a couple of detractors of, this whole line of thinking that Washington was on a clandestine level, a Pan-Africanist. There's a case called the Togo expedition that I do cover, and I may share it with you all. That being said, that case is not an example. People who have not done deep research on this issue of Washington in Africa, which is very much untouched, except for by myself and maybe one or two other scholars. That's not a case of that's like the case that is not Pan-Africanist, right? But I understand how people who are lay persons to this kind of research would note it, because white scholars have noted the Togo. The Togo is not notable by any scholar like myself, who is a humanist and an African person. It was an atrocity. It's a case where this is a perfect example of not Pan-Africanism. It's a case where Tuskegee graduates go and work with a German colonial regime to engage in a cotton expedition. Find out that it's horrible. Find out that it's not to the benefit of African people. All of the graduates from the Togo expedition actually die, and none of it is to the benefit of African people in any way, shape, or form. All of it is to the benefit of the colonial regime. And when I talk about having a having a measurable results orientation, this is what I'm talking about. Meaning we need to be able to assess the fact that something like that is absolutely not to the benefit of African people in any way, shape, or form. So it would not be considered Pan-Africanist. However, the two other cases, the African exclusion measure and the Liberian crisis, are without a doubt conclusively Pan-Africanist in nature and design, okay? So the other case you'll be reading about is the African exclusion measure. And that is the second case. You should see me share it shortly. And that will be the other case that you'll be reading this week, okay? So I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna take a couple of questions, and then I am going to go. I mean, this will be one of the few times that I actually finish on time, 12:45. And you see me looking two places because I'm about to post the cases in your course, okay? So give me a second. But if anybody had any questions about any of the cases that I just talked about today, or how we'll be dealing with them. And I'm going to be putting the quotes in from the cases in the group, because I want you all to participate and then give me some models of Pan-Africanism that you can identify, even in thought, in speech, in action. Okay, and so that's one of the things we're going to be doing this week. Let me see what these guys are saying in the chat. All right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Maria, James. Oh, hi. Oh, Jones, I'm sorry. Oh, my mom's side of the family name is Jones. Devania, yes, exactly. So there's a resurgence of the Klan and all of that in Alabama. And then there's, of course, yeah, the birth of a nation. Thank you for noting that. Who is that, Damani? Is that the Damani I know? I don't know. Anyway, my parents and grandparents are from Panama. My dear great-grandfather immigrated to Panama from Jamaica. Exactly, and he probably did that so around the time that the Panama Canal might have been built. You're so right. Yeah, but even so, like Washington was a great man, but we have to understand, it's like when we assess things with regard to African people, we are assessing our servants, not so much those individuals. We are critiquing at how they serve us, because it's really about us as African people. Do you get what I'm saying? Right. It's about how they serve us, and when they don't serve our interests and serve us, then we should have an open conversation about that as well. But we need to know how to model the behavior, right? How to properly serve African people and interests. Because one of the things that white supremacy and culture has taught us to do is go up against our best interests and ourselves consistently. Right? And so it would take some ideological development, theory, and practice to bring us out of this constant cycle of going against our own best interest. Right? Right. Preserving an African nation as Africans against the interests of those who wish to franchise Africa. Right. So basically, the idea of, okay, somebody wrote something. Yeah, basically, in short, nationalists only want one thing: a nation. They don't want to ride the bus. And I'm not belittling what's happened in America, but what I'm saying is that we have, even myself, I have grown up intellectually. When I say grow up, I don't mean chronologically grow up, but intellectually, I have spent an enormous amount of time in Black nationalist circles. But we have to understand that that's a little bit of a misnomer in this context, in the American context, because no Black nationalist organization is fighting for the takeover of the United States. Black nationalist organizations are generally, organizations are generally fighting for control of their own communities. But when we talk about true nationalism, and this is something I love to talk about, because true nationalism only sets its sights on one thing, and that's control of the nation. And the way to do that is to take land and hold it. Okay? So, we say things here to make us feel a little bit better. Malcolm sort of calls this issue out as well, right? In his speech in 1964 about his, movement around the world. And he knows, he's talking about the fact that, what do you want? Land. How do you get it? Through war. Okay, and nobody in America is doing that, right? Like, that's not what Black nationalists are saying, and that's not what Black nationalists even want. And I'm not disparaging that. But the use of the term in our context is generally a little bit of a misnomer. On the African continent, you see the highest expression of nationalism because what's happening on the African continent between 1962 and 63, you have 17 African nations take back their land from colonial and imperialist European nations. That's nationalism. Armed struggle is nationalism, right? We're not fighting to work this out. We're fighting for control of the nation, and the way you control the nation is by taking the land. Right? This is the only conversation to have for nationalists. Majority of the workers in Panama, Jamaica, and Barbados, but included men from other Caribbean. Yes, of course, the Caribbean, Central and South America. Yeah, everybody's, thank you, Damani. Yes, there are a lot of people who are know all about the Chinese Exclusion Act. And that's funny that they do when the African exclusion measure is so much longstanding, and it was an attempt to disenfranchise this very people who had put in, so in other words, when I say very people, I mean Black and African people, right? We are the people who actually, you know, fought for and established what? The Reconstruction Amendments, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, 14th Amendment being the equal protection under the law, right? It's the same amendment that allows naturalization of people coming from other places, and natural citizenship for people coming out of the places, and naturalization. In other words, if you're born in the United States, you are naturalized. Now you are born here as a citizen. Okay. And it is also the amendment that allows, that opens up America to other people who become citizens, and then have equal protection under the law in the United States. And so it's very interesting to see this measure or this act happen, and to see that it is the African population within the United States once again who is standing strong and saying, you will not lock out African people from here, there, or anywhere in the United States. They can benefit, okay? They can advance their lives. They can live here. They can come and have education here. And these are the people who are the human fuel and brought a 250-year, meaning African people within the United States, were the human fuel of the United States, and are people who brought a 250-year-old institution called slavery to an end in the nation, yes. And an institution that was responsible for 80% of the economy. So who else but us, but African people here, to say that it has more right than anybody else to say, you will not lock anybody out, certainly not other African people out because you think they will benefit from immigration to the United States. You will not employ racist ideology in that process, and you will not put them in the same category as criminals. See, the criminalization of Blackness, the criminalization of African identity and culture. So we didn't allow it. And when I talk about models of Pan-Africanism, we need to make that notable, because that's the way we need to be relating to other African people, and that's the way other African people and Black people need to be relating to us, right? And I, you know, so I'll leave it there because I can go on, and I will say more about it when we come together after you all have read it. But you know, that's exactly. Rafiq, how you doing, Rafiq? Okay. Okay, so I'm Rafiq. So who was the chief negotiator for Liberia? So Liberia has a consulate representative named Ernest Lyons. I think you have my book. So if you look in the Liberia case, there's a man named Ernest Lyons who is there. He's the chief consulate for the United States in Liberia. And he's the person who reaches out to Booker T. Washington. However, these negotiations are very covert and undercover for the Liberian crisis because it's not really on the radar. Much of it is taking place behind the scenes, right down to Booker T. Washington inviting the Liberian Commission to the United States for a secret meeting. If you look at, for those of you who have the book, and you don't have to get the book, you don't need to get the book, but I'm gonna just show you. There is a picture in the book, right? It's in shadows in the book. These men right here are the Liberian Commission to the United States. And Washington would bring them secretly to the White House, and they would engage in negotiations with Theodore Roosevelt, incumbent President Theodore Roosevelt, President-elect Taft, Elihu Root, who is the Secretary of State, head of the State Department, and they would engage in secret negotiations because Booker T. Washington in particular was concerned about the change in the administration, derailing negotiations to preserve Liberia. Because he, listen, you know, the guy was very practical. He knew that they weren't committed to Liberia. His presence is the commitment to Liberia, meaning that he is forcing them to do certain things. And if you read the case, you will get all the nuances of it, how he does that. Very skilled person. When you think about somebody born in slavery and then has the nerve to negotiate to preserve an African nation, you know that that's an extraordinary human being and had the consciousness to fight to preserve the nation as a whole. One of the criticisms Washington gives in light of the Liberian crisis is just this. He basically says that, and a lot of people will see this case or have heard of this case is like, oh, well, Booker T. Washington, you know, that's that Americo-Liberian, you know, thing that's like sort of like very African-American nationalism and all of that kind of stuff. No, absolutely not. Because if you read the case in its entirety and you go to the point of the recommendations, you see Booker T. Washington is not okay with the role of Americo-Liberians in the nation and sharply criticizes it. Okay, as I do, I begin the case with sharp criticism of the Americo-Liberian presence and posture in Liberia. And so this ideological development goes both ways, you know, in the sense that in the African exclusion measure, where there's a perfect model for Africans within the United States as to how to relate to Africans outside of the United States and the position to take with regard to racist US policies. But in terms of the Liberian crisis, you see a portion of the Americo-Liberian settler population not taking the right position once resettled on the continent of Africa in Liberia. That is the posture we don't want to take. When you come back to the African continent, you must not act like you are your colonizer, right? We know, y'all want to go too deep with it, but without having a full conversation, I don't want to misrepresent the issue. But what I'm saying is that African people in America cannot go back to Africa and play white, period. Okay, sure, we're an ethnic group, African so-called Americans. We are definitely an ethnic group. We share histories, their culture over time that we have been here in the United States, but we're not Europeans. If you go back to Africa, you need to ask yourself why and what your posture is going to be towards the indigenous African population, right? That's where ideological development takes place. When we're not Europeans. We don't come back to Africa and displace African indigenous populations from the land they've been on since time immemorial. We're not European. We don't do that. And that's problematic. That was sort of the posture of the Americo-Liberians taking some land and then creating a system of discrimination that marginalized the indigenous African population. So Washington, if you read the case in its entirety, you will see he levels sharp criticism and says that essentially if you fail to resolve the conflict between the indigenous African population and ethnicities on the ground who have a legitimate grievance against the Americo-Liberian population, then it will be the destruction of the nation. And so that's very important because, as we know, it would be an issue, a seed that would fester and be almost the destruction of the nation, right? The wars in Liberia can be tied back to this population in Liberia. It can be tied back to the Americo-Liberian population being the only group through which the politicians and leadership in that political leadership in that country come from. And that's the problem. It's a huge problem, right? But we need to know how to critique these things. Okay, so thank you, Rafi, for that question. I hope I answered you. So Ernest Lyons was worked for the US, but in Liberia. And then of course the Liberian Commission comes and to the United States, invited by Washington. And that picture is actually a picture of Washington taken in the garden, one of the gardens at Tuskegee, as Washington had invited the Liberian Commission to Tuskegee. And is very excited about it. You know, you have to read it because there's a lot of things going on in that case, but the most important thing is that the case is about the preservation of Liberia. It's a live to fight another day case. It's not the best deal going, but it's the only deal going, and it achieves the highest of all objectives, which is to keep Liberia a free African nation. All right, so when we think about models of Pan-Africanism, those are two. Both of those cases ultimately are to the benefit of African people. Okay, so the book, some of you I think have, can you all post the link for the book? I actually got some copies of the book. Yeah, for sure. Africa Beyond team, yes, Rafiq. Okay. So the book is a teaching book. When I wrote this book, and this book is old now, it's like 7 years old now, but when I wrote this book, I changed it from endnotes to footnotes so that you can actually go to the end of it and see each and every citation, and you can actually find the Booker T. Washington papers at most major libraries. They'll have the collection, like the Schomburg in New York. Most major libraries in any city will have the Booker T. Washington papers of 15 volumes of Washington's personal papers, where you see, I don't write these cases with secondary sources. They're from primary sources. So you can find that. But anyway, I Love Black People Administrator. Can you put the link for this book, Booker T. Washington Africa .com up? And I actually, there were some people in this group who actually purchased the book, and we were in between things because things were slow during the pandemic. And so I actually did it myself and sent the book out, which is not the normal scenario when things are, you know, not going on. So I sent some books out to some people, and I have some more to send out to some other people who I believe recently bought the book. Okay, so I will do that personally if you order it. Right, exactly. So not any other time, but right now, if you order the book, then you actually, and if you order the book, I will be signing and sending it to you. But let me just be very clear. You do not have to order this book, okay? That is not required. You don't have to order this book. I will be sharing major chapters of the book, both, like I said, the librarian crisis and the African exclusion measure. I'll be sharing that. And then I'll be sharing some other parts of the book. And those are the money cases, okay? Those are the cases that I spoke about today, and the critical cases. Now, the rest of the book gives context, right, for those cases. How does Washington end up this unlikely figure, this accommodation, is somebody they call Uncle Tom? How does he end up being up to all of this, right? And, you know, listen, this book has done so well. The reason why the book has done so well is because, yes, this is all the clandestine stuff that nobody knows and would take the time to research many moons ago. And I see some people, you know, they have an appetite for the subject matter and they don't, you know, but, you know, it is a lot of tedious work. You're talking about 15 volumes. Each volume is 400 to 500 pages each of personal letters. So I am, you know, so I had a little bit of, not to just play my whole hand, but I had a little insight of some of it. I am a Tuskegee alumni, but it is not what brought me to this work, right? It's just what gave me a little bit of an advantage with regard to this work, but it's not what brought me to this work on Washington and Africa, actually. Okay, I did it much after I left and graduated from Tuskegee. Yeah, so I don't even, we can talk about it if some of you guys want me to talk about it, but I don't necessarily use I Love Black People as like the vehicle to discuss that book, except for share those cases, because we want to hone in on what true Pan-Africanism is, how it's expressed, what that means. And even so, we can touch on, like we did today, what African nationalism really truly means, right? And so this case, the cases in the book, and I just shared the African exclusion measure case just now in the group. These cases are what I know for sure to be Pan-Africanist, okay? And that's why I share that. Okay, so let me see what the last comments are, and let's go. Okay, so yeah, you can order the book. Thank you very much, Rafiq. Yes, Nana Kua, yes, she's great, giving us all that good information to share. Get our health right. Yes. No, so take I Love Black People, take the Amazon option down, because I don't think that, well, it used to be on Amazon, but it's very expensive on Amazon. So just note that there's another version of the book coming out really soon, and it's going to be in a couple of languages. So those of you who are on here and speak more than one language or speak a different language, there'll be other copies available, but there's also going to be the ebook available. So this time it's kind of a little bit of a wider audience and publishing, and it expands on actually this conversation too about the African exclusion measure. More of what the dialogue in Congress is included in this new version of the book. So yeah. That should be happening by April sometime. So sometime in April, that's going to be released. I don't know the date just yet, but so you can take down the Amazon link that you just put up. Don't use the Amazon link. Use the Booker T. Washington Africa.com link, and it'll go through like PayPal or whatever, and you purchase the book there. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to end there. Thank you all. Chris Emmanuel, follow the link. Can the administrators post one more time how people can register and participate in I Love Black People, become an ambassador and take the courses formally? Chris and Manuel, so they'll repost that information for you. So, and I'm gonna stop there. I normally go way over, so I think I'm gonna keep doing things this way, where I introduce what you're gonna read first, post it while we're in session, and then, you know, talk about it during the week, right? As opposed to introduce it, then post it, talk about it, and then go to something new the following week. I'm gonna, you know, do things at one time so that we all know what we're reading. So you know what you're getting, and you won't, you know, you'll give it its just due in terms of working through the information, okay? All right, thank you so much. I appreciate you all staying to the end. It is 1:01 where I'm at. I am because we are, and I'll see you in the groups, okay? Peace.
I am because we are. Thank you so much.
Okay,
To
thank
the
you.
end, yes,
Hi,
to the end, to the end with Gambirano, Tiedon, Adamani, and Ifekin, Maria P. Jones, Alman Baka Sango, Africa Beyond T, David Moses, Avani, Chris Emmanuel, Elijah Nyabuti, Wayne, Marcelo Kwaname, Edward Safa Jr., Prince Zaga. You are all loved, guys. Wayne, Utsino, Odrick, Eugene, we appreciate all of you. We love you. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and Saturday.
Okay.
Some of them you are
All
starting
right,
your
folks,
day.
thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
I am because we are.
Bye-bye.